I'm Aryeh Schwartz, along with my co-hosts tonight, Rachel Galligan and Pat Ralph. Welcome to the WNBA Insider Show. Each week we cover different topics important to the W, using X's and O's along with key stats to bring honest and critical analysis. People, first things first, we started this a few weeks ago, just so you understand, we're continuing the conversation. 4 WNBA games tonight. One of them has not kicked off yet. 3 games have finished. So far, we have Lynx lose to the Indiana Fever 59-71. Quick reactions. I'm going to go first, then we're going to toss it over to Rachel, then Pat. First things first, Minnesota just couldn't buy a shot. Their best quarter was their first quarter, scoring 19 points. After that, they didn't even eclipse 15. I mean, we're scoring halves in Lynx history and all season, but I don't want to look at the stats because it's embarrassing to look back when the last time they did this poor. As far as scoring, snaps a 7-game win streak. They were led by Rebecca Brunson, who had a nice game, 13 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists. But the real story to me is Indiana, a team that everyone has talked about. Oh, this record doesn't show who they are. It doesn't show who they are. And tonight proved that. They get their second win of the season, their first win on an away game. And, this team is a team that I don't care what their record is. They're not giving up. To me, that says a lot about Pokey Chapman. Rachel, your thoughts?
You nailed it on the head when it comes to different shooting percentages and scoring. This is a trap game. This is definitely a trap game. You look at what the Lynx have been doing. You look at kind of the streak they've been on. I think I said it on the podcast maybe a week ago. They're not going to be able to just continue the win streak. They're going to get upset at some point. And a lot of times it can happen to the lowest team in the league. This is just an instance where, man, this is that trap game. Nothing goes your way. Everything goes theirs. And it gets you. You don't shoot well. Maya was off. She goes 3 for 15, which, I can't remember the last time we saw that. On the flip side, the Fever, as you said, they're playing with confidence. They believe. They just added Cappie Pondexter, a veteran who's just going to bring in a nice shot in the arm from just energy, a presence standpoint. They put up some numbers. Vivian's finished with 13, Achanwa with 17. She's been as consistent as anyone else on that team this entire year. And then you add Cappie, who, finished the game with 12 in just about 21 minutes of play. So this is a game that, hats off to the Fever. This is why we play those games. That's why, the clock has to be set. The time ticks for 40 minutes and you have to play the games. And they were the tougher team tonight, whether it was from a scoring percentage standpoint, but this was a trap game. And these are the things that happen through the course of a season. Congrats to the Fever for being able to pull out a win like that. It's their second win of the season, and definitely I would think is going to give them a ton of confidence. I think I saw a quick tweet by Tamika Catchings that was like, all right, our new season starts now. And that's got to be the mentality for the Fever moving forward. All right, okay, man, we just beat the defending champs. We can beat anybody. And we've got this new addition to the team. Our rookies are playing well. We're no longer considering ourselves rookies anymore after being halfway through the season. We know what's going on, and I wouldn't be surprised. They're going to be able to pull out a few more throughout the rest of the course of the season. But I don't want to get too far ahead. I'm curious now, and I know LA hasn't played yet, but the Lynx now get to go home, and they're hosting LA on Thursday. It's always interesting to see how a championship caliber team who has kind of this slip up like this or a kind of a detrimental loss that really shouldn't have happened in their eyes, how they respond, especially when you're playing the LA Sparks. So for me, this makes that game even more exciting than what it already was.
Pat, give me one sentence to describe this game to you.
One sentence. Wow. Okay. Well, the Lynx.
No run on.
The Lynx did not make shots tonight, and the Fever were able to, and an interesting stat here, were able to out-rebound the Lynx. I think that says a lot. The Lynx, if I may add another sentence, the Lynx do not ever get out-rebounded. Very rarely. They're the best rebounding team in the league. To get out-rebounded by the worst team in the league says all you need to know about tonight. And you guys hit all the other points on the head. Perfectly said.
I'm gonna drop one more thing. Well, two things real quick. One, Kelsey Mitchell still having her struggles, shooting 3 for 14, 0 from 5 for the three-point line, but she adds it in other ways with 5 assists. She gets 9 total points, and she got a few rebounds. The only other thing I want to add, like Rachel was saying, Cappy, she brought that energy. You know, she hasn't been getting a lot of minutes this season, so she could bring that energy. She drops 12 points and a few big shots. Pat, talk to me about your New York. Talk to me.
So tonight, the Liberty, after they got that win on Sunday night in Chicago to snap that 5-game losing streak, they got right back to their normal ways of losing tonight, lose in a blowout, 77-62 at home to Seattle. You can't even say if you watch the game tonight, the Liberty, it's not even like they played bad. It's just the disparity in talent between Seattle and the Liberty was just evident. The Liberty just don't have the playmakers, the talent, the offensive skill, the firepower to keep up with Seattle that can just throw Breanna Stewart at you and Sue Bird and Jewel Lloyd. And, they just can throw. They have so much more they can throw at you. Natasha Howard, who we've talked a lot about in this podcast. The Liberty just don't have enough to keep up with them, and that's why they lost tonight. It just goes to show right now how good Seattle is. I mean, this is a team that last year, if you had told me they shot 22% from three, I would have said they lose because that was a team that was so dependent on what it does offensively. But they're such a more balanced team. You watch it when you see them play. Breanna Stewart has just gotten so much better. I would say right now, if you told me, this is a discussion for another time, but if you would tell me who I'd vote for MVP right now, I'd probably vote for Stewie. She's been outstanding. And the Liberty, I mean, that's the thing. The Storm win by double digits on the road on a night where they don't shoot well from three. It shows that this team is legit. This is a title contender. And the Liberty, it's just, I tweeted this out for them. The problem with them, and I'm writing about this week, is kind of like, why have they been so bad this year? And why have they been struggling? And, one of the problems is they get nothing consistent offensively outside of Tina Charles. She didn't have a great night tonight, but, they don't have enough consistency on offense to pick up the slack for her. And she does everything. And this is a team that now they're 5-12. They've already matched the loss total they've had last year. They're going to need a miracle at this point. If they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to need teams like Dallas and Atlanta to slip up down the stretch, but I don't foresee that happening. And they're going to need a miracle like they did last year when they won their final 10 games. But at that point, they were at 500. Now they're 7 games under, and they've dug themselves a hole, and they're in a not a great spot. So, again, they didn't play bad tonight, but they're in a tough spot. Now they've got to go to Washington on Thursday, and then they get a Dallas team in the arena at home on Sunday. So not easy for New York. They've got a quick turnaround, have to travel to Washington on Thursday. But and Seattle just continues to impress night in and night out.
Talk to me, Rachel. Your thoughts.
Can I just say ditto?
Yeah, that works. And I'm just going to say I know why Rachel's saying ditto because she's looking at the list of what we're talking about next. Rachel, take it away. Do your thing. Talk about Liz.
You said you were going to challenge me, so I'm going to stick to it. So we're gonna talk about the Sky Wings matchup, which final score for that. What was it? I'm trying to pull it up real quick. 106.
108-85.
108-85.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness. I actually predicted that the Sky would pull this one off. I was way off with that in my earlier conversation with Natasha Cloud. But, the Sky is they're inconsistent just as much as really the Liberty probably are. Maybe not as inconsistent offensively, but they definitely have their moments. They've struggled consistently on the defensive end of the floor. And I think tonight there was a player on the Wings team who went 16 for 20 and finished with 37 points, 10 rebounds. I mean, there's really what do you do? What do you do when you have someone on who's shooting, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot shots, shooting that well, just completely dominant inside? They did not have an answer for her. It was brutal. They shoot, the Wings shoot 57% from the field, and that's because of the shots they were getting. They were pounding it inside, and just to go along with that, Skylar Diggins finishes with 20. Alicia Gray finishes with 10, Azurá Stevens with 12, and so offensively, they were clicking on all cylinders. They got the ball inside where they wanted to go to that really tall player that plays for the Wings. And she just completely had her way. The Sky could not respond. And, defensive end of the floor, you can't give up 106 or 108, I apologize, and expect to win that game. It's just not going to happen.
I just want to add to that real quick. I mean, they held it close for the half. I was starting to think, oh, snap, Rachel knows what she's talking about the Sky pulling off this win. And then the second half, I was like, Rachel knows nothing. No.
And it's been – and the Sky will do that. I think being consistent for 40 minutes is a difficult thing to do. It's definitely a difficult thing to do when you've kind of got a young team where you've got maybe some consistency with some veterans, but you're still struggling in other areas. And that third quarter, just they completely came out at half, and they, I'm just going to say it, Liz Cambage had her way in that third quarter, and it got extremely ugly very fast. Like you said, they kept it close. They had their chances to make it a game, but the second half it completely got away from them. They weren't able to get stops. Really in the transition game, from the 3-point line, I think the Wings were shot a little bit more than usual, but they still hit 8 of them. They just, the Sky dug themselves a hole. But, offensively, they still put up points themselves. They scored 85. Diamond Shields put up 20. Allie Quigley did what Allie Quigley always does, which is she is one of the most consistent offensive threats on the Sky team. She finishes with 18. Vandersloot finishes with 11. But unfortunately, defensive end of the floor, Liz Cambage has her way like that, and it's just you're never going to win that game. So I think even on the glass, Dallas only out rebounded Chicago by 5.
Right.
But they shot so well too that it was like, man, especially on the offensive boards, there wasn't a ton of them to come back for them, but that it wasn't pretty. And Jamira Faulkner went down, which really added salt to the wound, and our thoughts and prayers are with her that everything's okay. Not sure what the status is of that, but just a really tough night for the Chicago Sky.
I do want to say before I pass it on to Pat, first of all, Rachel, props to you. You went 11 minutes talking WNBA without bringing up Liz. I have respect for you even more so tonight when she drops that 37-point game. It's hard to not talk about such a dominant player. Also, Dallas is now up to 8-8. They tie it up, or they go 500 now, and they're a team that we've talked about all these different scenarios. For me, I don't want to see them eke into the playoffs because for me, they're a team that's going to be on the bad side of exhaustion if they have to play a couple one-and-done games. I think they'd win those games, don't get me wrong, but then to go through that one-and-done series and then another one and then make it to a situation where they need to win 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5, that's something that I just don't want to see because this Wings team is too exciting. Pat, talk to me about the Sky.
Well, a lot of what Rachel said is right. This is a team that is fun to watch. Like I genuinely enjoy watching this guy. They have a lot of fun young players. I enjoy watching their backcourt and stuff. But a lot of what she said, the consistency is one. They're a lot of fun to watch offensively. They're going to put up a lot of points. There's no question about that. What they can do offensively, the scoring and stuff, how they get up and down the floor, like no question about it. It's really figuring out the thing that's going to get them to that next level. And we're seeing signs of it with the talent and stuff. It's just the question is what's going to get them to that level of, as you mentioned, and we're alluding to, is getting into the playoffs and getting out of the bottom 4. Is going to be defense and stuff. And you saw tonight, Dallas you have Cambage who goes 16 of 20 on 37 points, just having to work. You can't do that and expect to win in this league. So I like the Sky. I think they're fun. They're exciting to watch. There's a lot of skill, a lot of talent there. And you can tell they're getting better and they're getting closer. You can tell this year they've definitely have made improvements from last year for sure. So they're exciting to watch. And obviously we know about Dallas. Exciting to watch too. Do you guys mind, before we jump to our next topic, I wanted to interject with a very interesting quote to come out of the post-game press conference tonight from the Liberty Storm game, if you guys don't mind.
Go for it, my man.
You guys might want to sit down for this one. This is Katie Smith. We're being very repetitive on what we've asked them to do. We were undisciplined and not always on the same page on both ends of the floor. at the end of the day, it's just not a very disciplined basketball team. I can't put it any better. That's pretty tough words. Wow. The frustration, I mean, if you watch that game tonight, Katie Smith was getting really frustrated. They were even mocking her on the broadcast because she kept clicking her pen on the broadcast. This team is getting pretty, you can tell things, everybody's pretty worn out up in Westchester.
I don't know if anybody who listens to this show also is a Patreon subscriber. If you're not, please do it. Support us for less than a cup of coffee. You can get some awesome exclusive info. But if you are, the reason I bring this up is besides the shameless plug, because I have no shame, the main reason I brought it up was because on my most recent, every week I put out a newsletter, but I do a little letter from the editor, if you will, letter from me. And in my letter this week, I said, New York is a team that doesn't know they're in a rebuild and has been fighting it. At a certain point, it's time to rip off the Band-Aid. And to me, it's time to rip it off. The reason I chose the Band-Aid expression is because the longer they play to this idea of that they aren't in a rebuild, the more it hurts. Do not slowly rip off the Band-Aid. It hurts for your fans. Your fans are already hurting. Rip off the Band-Aid. Start focusing on to rebuild a completely new system. I'm calling it.
They got booed. I think it was... I forget what game it was recently, but in the recent home stretch before tonight, it wasn't Chicago. It might have been Phoenix. I forget what it was, but they got booed. They got booed off the floor, and to get booed by it's not good. And I think that I'm writing about that. I said this week for the site, and I think you're on the right track, Arya. I mean, there's a lot of they're trying to play a new style. But I don't think the roster fits the style, and I think they're going to have a lot of things to address this offseason.
Moving on to the last game of the the quad games of tonight in the WNBA, the Connecticut Sun taking on the LA Sparks. We could flash back to their first meeting of the season. I'm going to hold off on that real quick just because there's been a lot of fluidity. And I know early in the season we saw it because Kurt Miller was trying to figure out what was going on with their lineup and how we wanted to play it with Shanae coming back and Jonquel coming back really late in the preseason. Let me just run through their starting lineup, which at first I was thinking, okay, they could do some damage. But as much as I love Rachel Banham, I think she's going to be a defensive liability going up against the backcourt of LA. We got Jonquel Jones, Shanae Agumake, Shakina Strickland, Rachel Banham, and Jasmine Thomas. Now, I like the lineup. It's a cool lineup. I did see in pregame stretching that AT, Alyssa Thomas, the heart, soul, and veins of this team is stretching, but I believe my understanding is she is not in for this game. Rachel, Pat, I'll let you go first. Sorry,
no,
Pat,
it's okay.
You just spoke. What are your thoughts? I mean, does Connecticut have a chance? They're not playing Connecticut basketball right now. They're not playing Kurt Miller Connecticut basketball. They're playing, pre-Kurt Miller basketball right now.
Well, I mean, look what just happened between Minnesota and the Fever. I mean, I think to sit there and say, did they have a chance? Of course there's a chance. That's why we play the games. Anything can happen. Someone has an off night, it's who knows. At the end of the day, the Connecticut Sun are a talented team. They're well coached. They are facing adversity right now. On the floor, off the floor, there's things that they're struggling just themselves to kind of figure out. But you know what? You never know who could have a breakout game, who could step up. It's still kind of hard to say. It's been so back and forth ever since June 22nd. It's been a loss, a win, a loss, a win, a loss, a win. So trying to string together some consistency here, at least in the win column, has been a challenge for a while now. Honestly, I predict the Sparks will win. The Sparks are playing well for the most part. I think they're proving to be one of the top teams in the league. But I think it'll be a good matchup. Two very well coached teams. Two teams that, let's not forget, Kurt Miller was on that staff with LA. So there's a really good mutual respect and understanding there between Kurt Miller and Brian Agler. And I think it's going to be a really solid basketball game. It'll be really competitive, but at the same time, I anticipate the Sparks will probably handle them fairly easily, in my opinion. Pat, what do you think?
Well, you hit it right, Rachel. I mean, you can't take this game for granted because, like we just talked about, Minnesota tonight lost to Indiana, and there's a good chance that was a trap game because they're looking ahead to Thursday night, round 3 between the Lynx and the Sparks. So you never know. Los Angeles, they could be doing the same thing. They're thinking, okay, we got Connecticut coming in. They're on a West Coast swing. We should take care of them, no problem. Get them out of here, and then we can get on the plane and get to Minnesota and get ready for round 3 this year. They can't do that. So you can't take this team for granted. And yeah, they've been inconsistent, but even though when they have played well, they play really well. Like their ceiling is really high. Obviously if you can have Alyssa Thomas on floor, that makes a difference. For me, the Sparks, the thing that makes the difference for them is when you get NECA is healthy. I remember you saw it when she's out. They're not the same team. She's their MVP. As much as Candace Parker is a great player and stuff. NECA does the little things and stuff, not having her in there. But for Connecticut, this is a huge stretch for them because this is a really tough swing because not only are they right now on another West Coast swing, which they just did, about a month ago or so, a couple weeks ago, they're doing the West Coast swing as the 3 best teams in the league right now. I mean, you have to go to Seattle on Sunday. They get pummeled. They go to Los Angeles tonight. And then they've got to get on a plane and go to Phoenix, who also has the best record alongside Seattle right now. So Connecticut right now this is sink or swim time. And they better be able to swim. They don't have to I'm not saying they've got to win tonight, but they can't get run off the court.
Yes, I agree. This is a massive stretch. It's it's a brutal road swing. The good news is there's not really any back-to-backs. There's a little bit of time in between them. But yeah, I mean, you're right. You said it perfectly. This is a big time week, and unfortunately for them, they're missing a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So, like you said, sink or swim. It's going to be very telling, kind of where this Connecticut team's mentality is at. Just watch the way they're playing. Watch how they respond. Are they getting chippy with each other? Are they sticking together? Those are things that I think it's important to kind of pay attention to right now. With the Sun and kind of how they're feeling, how things are going. But, I think it'll be a great matchup nonetheless. And I think they've got a chance, not just tonight, but against Phoenix as well.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at this. The record's 9-7 right now. They've got this 3-game road streak in the West Coast. They come out of that 1-2. I mean, you're a 500 team looking at the second half of the season, and you better make a nice push because remember this. We were talking about this earlier in the season. The 1 and 2 seed is so important to get those buys, be able to rest, especially for a team that's had some nicks and bangs, or whatever the term is. I'm not one for those. But it's important, and it's also very interesting because something that I've gotten a lot of criticism for. So I kind of want your guys' takes on this before I even speak to defend myself. Something I've gotten a lot of criticism for is when talking about Connecticut Sun early on in the season and in the preseason, we talked about their depth a lot. And I mean a lot. This is a team that has multiple players who come off the bench who could be starting on other teams. So I think a lot of people very quickly, because of their depth, when you have an injury like Alyssa Thomas, and you have someone like Courtney Williams missing for personal reasons on day-to-day, it's really a situation where a lot of people might stand up and say, well, Arya, you were saying they had, 3 extra players that could be starting. So why is this an issue? Pat, why defend me? Defend my honor.
Defend your position, right?
Well, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still stand by that. We have.
Okay,
Pat, you can.
I'm gonna go
for it, Pat.
I know where you're coming from, and I'll defend you on this. And it goes back to what we saw last year with our beloved Minnesota Lynx. When Lindsay Whalen went out with the hand injury, Renee Montgomery, now with the Dream, stepped in to the starting lineup. But as you guys know, they were not the same team while Lindsay Whalen was gone. Renee is a great player, but Minnesota struggled with her out. They were not the same team that month in the final month of the regular season. And it threw off the team because Renee's role is to come off the bench. That was her role. She was the spark plug, the offensive spark plug, who could kind of come in with the second unit, play against the second unit of opponents, of opposing teams. And this was not her role. So it throws off the whole rotation. It throws everything off. So you change everyone. It changes everyone's role and stuff when someone like a Courtney Williams, or you're adjusting to Junquel and Chene returning, and you've got Shakina Strickland going to the bench. You've got Alyssa Thomas there. You're trying to figure out roles. And yes, I know we're getting to the halfway point of the season, so I understand from the other perspective, it's like, shouldn't they have this figured out by now? But when people are out and this is what happens. Roles, people are not in their normal, what their job or their task is for the team, and things get thrown off. So I look back to Minnesota is that, when Lindsay Whalen was out, it threw everything for a loop because it just threw the rotations out and everyone was out of their normal, what role they played on the team. But I'm curious here from Rachel, what you think about that and stuff, and what you think if in defending Aria here on this.
Well, I think my take on it, you guys are, everyone's right. Not having Alyssa Thomas is crucial. I mean, it's brutal to them, and it's just showing how much they miss her and her presence. And then you add Courtney Williams on there, and just the dynamic player she is and what she brings to the table. But at the same time, you kind of have to learn to adjust and respond. And players need to step up. And this is a great opportunity with Alyssa Thomas out, Courtney Williams out, for some people to really step up. Like you said, we're at the halfway point. There's got to be some way that we can fill the gaps or find some sort of some form of consistency, whether that's offensively, defensively, whatever it is. A team is constantly reinventing themselves in certain ways throughout the course of a season, because you're dealing with injuries, you're dealing with adversity, things that are happening. And so you got to find a way to make it work. And if the bench is as deep as, you're believing that it is, then you got to think at some point there's going to be at least a form of consistency in somebody that's stepping up. I don't think we've necessarily seen that quite yet, in my opinion. And maybe, this week and this stretch will prove me wrong. But, there needs to be a little bit more consistency. It's a great opportunity. I don't know how long it's going to be until those two return. But you can't just throw in the towel. And I'm not saying that's what they're doing. But you got to go. You got to figure it out. There's got to be some sort of answer, some sort of way to reinvent it. And I know that's what Curt Miller's trying to do. We just maybe necessarily haven't seen it from a consistency and a wins and losses standpoint quite yet.
Yeah, it's a struggle. They're just tipping off right now. I believe early on in the game, it's going to show a lot. So I seriously implore everybody, turn your TVs on, turn your computers on, Chromecast it. I don't think you can Roku it, but whatever you're doing, this is not a game you want to miss. Maybe after a couple quarters, it might be a game you want to miss, but it's going to be some great basketball. So make sure to tune in. That's all we got for this episode of continuing the conversation on the WNBA Insider Podcast show. And I really, truly want to thank my co-hosts, my hosts, Rachel Galligan, Pat Ralph, WNBA Insider crew. We got you covered for anything you want, WNBA.